Ever catch yourself going down these rabbit holes about, like, historical events, wondering about all those what-ifs and missed connections?
Totally. It's like history is full of those sliding door moments.
Right. So today's deep dive, we're going to unpack what it takes to be a historian.
And it's got to be more than just, loving history, right?
Definitely not. We're going way beyond the surface here.
Digging deep, uncovering hidden stories, and then the best part, getting to share them with the world.
Totally. And we've got RoleCatcher's career guide and their interview guide to help us out. They even have AI tools for acing those interview questions.
Oh, nice. Like having a secret weapon for your job hunt.
Right. So let's dive into some of those common questions. First up, what inspired you to become a historian?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's personal, It's your chance to really connect with the interviewer on a human level.
Because anyone can memorize names and dates, right?
Exactly. But this question gets at what drew you to this field in the first place. Was it a specific event you couldn't stop thinking about, a biography that blew your mind, or maybe even a question you've had since you were a kid?
And RoleCatcher suggests framing your answer as a story, right? Not just rattling off facts about your favorite historical period.
Stories are powerful. It's the difference between saying, I love ancient Egypt, and saying, when I was 10, I found my great-grandmother's diary from her trip to Egypt in the 1920s, and suddenly those pyramids weren't just pictures in a book. They were real places she'd walked.
Okay, wow, that example gave me chills.
Right. It makes it real.
So you've hooked them with your passion, you've told a great story. Now let's talk about the actual work. RoleCatcher highlights, how do you conduct research for your historical work?
This is where you get to show off your methodology, how you think like a historian. And let me tell you, it's not as simple as just Googling something.
Definitely not.
You've got to mention those primary sources, original documents, artifacts, firsthand accounts. Those are your gold mines.
But so much of history is about interpretation, right?
Right.
And that's where those secondary sources come in.
Exactly. Scholarly articles, books written by other historians, they provide context and analysis. But as a good historian, you've got to evaluate them critically. Could there be bias? Are they relying on outdated information? You're like a detective piecing together the truth from all these different pieces of evidence.
That's a great way to put it. It actually reminds me of something RoleCatcher emphasizes: continuous learning. This field is always evolving. So how do you stay updated on the latest research?
It really is constantly evolving. You've got to be a lifelong learner. Definitely mention reading academic journals, knowing who the big names are in your specific area of history. Conferences and symposiums are also great for networking and staying ahead of the curve.
And don't underestimate those online resources.
For sure.
Reputable historical blogs and websites can offer fresh perspectives and maybe even spark new avenues of inquiry. I even heard about a historian who uses data visualization tools to map out historical trends, which I think is so cool.
Technology is becoming more and more important in historical research. That actually reminds me of another question RoleCatcher highlighted. How do you integrate technology into your historical work?
So it's not just dusty archives anymore.
Not at all. Historians are using digital databases, mapping software, even virtual reality to recreate historical environments. Right. You've got to think about the specific tools you use in your own research and be ready to talk about them.
And that's where those AI features on RoleCatcher could be super helpful. I mean, tailoring your resume and cover letter to match specific job descriptions, that can be a game changer.
Seriously, it's like having a secret weapon to help you stand out from the crowd.
Right. And their AI-powered interview practice. It's like having a personal coach in your pocket, giving you feedback on your answers, your delivery, maybe even your body language.
Okay, that's amazing. So much better than practicing in front of the mirror by yourself.
Right. Speaking of body language, let's talk about those trickier interview questions, the ones that might make you sweat a little. RoleCatcher actually lists one that I think we all struggle with, and it's, what are your weaknesses?
Oh, man. Yeah, that one's tough. But it's also a chance to show self-awareness and that you're always looking to grow. Don't just give a canned response like, I'm a perfectionist. Think about a specific area where you're actively trying to improve.
So instead of just stating a weakness, you're showing them that you're proactive about your own development, both personally and professionally.
Exactly.
I like that. And RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you frame this answer, right?
For sure. It helps you find that sweet spot between honesty and positivity. Like, you could say, I'm sometimes overly focused on the details, which can make it hard to meet deadlines, but I'm working on improving my time management skills and prioritizing tasks more effectively. So you're being honest, but also showing that you have a plan.
That's great advice. Okay, let's move on to another question that can be a little daunting. What do you consider to be the most important skills for a historian?
All right, with this one, you've got to connect the dots between your skills and what the job actually requires. Don't just list off generic skills.
Right, like I'm organized.
Exactly.
Okay.
Show them how you use those essential skills, like critical thinking, reading comprehension, analytical skills, and back it up with real examples.
It's all about showing, not just telling.
100%. Give them a specific example of how you put those skills to work, maybe in a research project, an academic paper, even a volunteer role.
Make it real for them.
And this is where RoleCatcher's AI can be a lifesaver. It can analyze your responses and suggest ways to make them even stronger, drawing from its massive database of successful interview answers.
It's like having a team of career experts in your back pocket, which is amazing.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered some of the more like challenging interview questions, but what about the ones that really dig into the nitty-gritty of being a historian? RoleCatcher mentions that interviewers often ask about specific research methodologies.
Oh, absolutely. They want to know you can walk the walk. They might ask, what are your preferred research methods? Or tell me about a time you had to change your research approach.
So be ready to talk about your experience with different methods, whether it's archival research, oral history interviews, statistical analysis, you name it.
And don't be afraid to get into the weeds a little bit. Talk about the challenges you faced and how you overcame them. Did you have to track down a rare document or decipher a handwritten manuscript? Those details make your experience come alive.
Yeah, it shows you can handle the detective work.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground here, from showcasing your passion for history to navigating those tricky interview questions. What's next?
I think it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. The job market for historians. It's competitive out there.
It is, and RoleCatcher doesn't sugarcoat it, but they offer strategies for standing out.
They do, and one of those strategies is really showcasing what makes you unique. What sets you apart from other candidates? Have you published any articles, presented at conferences, worked on any cool digital history projects?
This is where your passion projects and even those side hustles can shine.
Totally.
Did you start a history blog? Volunteer at a local museum? Those experiences demonstrate your initiative and commitment to the field, even if you're just starting out.
For sure. And don't underestimate the power of networking. Go to conferences, join professional organizations, connect with historians online. It all helps.
And don't be afraid to reach out to historians whose work you admire. Ask for informational interviews. Pick their brains. Learn from their experiences.
Building relationships is key in any field, and history is no different.
And this is another area where those AI features on RoleCatcher can be super helpful. They have a tool that analyzes your skills and experience and actually matches you with potential mentors in your field. How cool is that?
That's amazing. It's like having a personal networking assistant. Plus, they offer personalized tips for crafting compelling emails and reaching out to those potential connections. It really is. They take care of all the hard parts for you. But let's not forget, even with the best tools, landing your dream job often comes down to nailing that interview.
Oh, for sure. Interviews can be super nerve-wracking, even when you know your stuff. But it feels like we've already covered a lot of great tips for those common questions.
Huh.
What about those curveball questions, though? The ones that really throw you off?
You mean the ones that make you think on your feet? Like, do they really know their stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah, those are good. RoleCatcher actually gives some good examples of those in their interview guide. For instance, they talk about how interviewers might ask about your knowledge of those really key figures or debates in your specific area of history.
So, like, if you're specializing in, say, the American Revolution, be prepared to discuss the different ways historians have interpreted the event's causes or the roles of key figures.
Exactly. They want to see that you've gone beyond just the textbook narrative and really engaged with different historical perspectives.
It's about showing them you're not just like regurgitating facts, but that you're actually thinking critically about the past. And this reminds me, RoleCatcher's AI can actually analyze your answers for those more subtle cues, right?
Oh.
Like how well you could articulate complex ideas or demonstrate your understanding of like historiography, which is kind of a big deal.
Huge. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. Their AI can pick up on those subtle things and offer suggestions for improvement. For example, it might suggest you use stronger verbs to really convey your analysis or give specific examples to back up your claims.
It's like having a personal editor for your interview answers, which would be amazing.
No, right.
Okay, so we've talked about showcasing your knowledge and your critical thinking skills, but what about those questions that get into those ethical dilemmas that historians often face? Because those could be tricky.
Right. Those are super important. Historians often work with sensitive topics and deal with conflicting accounts of what happened. Interviewers might ask you how you deal with bias in historical sources, or how you handle emotionally charged subject matter.
So it's about showing them your integrity and commitment to presenting a balanced and nuanced perspective no matter how difficult the subject matter.
Exactly. They want to know that you're aware of your own biases and that you're committed to letting the evidence guide your interpretations, not your own opinions.
Right. So how would you suggest approaching a question like, how do you handle conflicting historical accounts?
Well, I think honesty and transparency are key. Acknowledge that history is rarely black and white, and that there are often multiple valid perspectives on the same event. And then walk them through your process for evaluating different sources, considering their biases, weighing the evidence, that kind of thing.
And it's okay to say that you don't always have all the answers, right?
Right.
Sometimes the historical record is incomplete or even contradictory.
Exactly. It's more about being upfront about the limitations of historical research while still aiming for accuracy and objectivity.
It's about the process, not necessarily always finding a perfect answer.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so much to keep in mind. It's a good thing RoleCatcher has those AI-powered practice scenarios. You can actually simulate those tough interview questions before the big day.
Right. That's so helpful. And their feedback is super valuable. It can really help you fine-tune your answers and project confidence, even when you're faced with these curveball questions.
Anything to calm those pre-interview jitters, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
But for a second, I want to shift gears just a bit and talk about the bigger picture here. What are some of the rewards and challenges of actually pursuing a career as a historian?
Well, as we've talked about, the job market can be pretty competitive. And RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from that in their career guide. But for those who are truly passionate about history, the rewards can be incredibly fulfilling.
So what are those rewards? What makes all that hard work and dedication worth it in the end?
Honestly, for a lot of historians, it's that thrill of discovery, uncovering some hidden piece of the past, piecing together a forgotten narrative, maybe shedding light on an event or a figure that's been overlooked or misunderstood. It's exciting.
It really is like being a detective of the past. You get to uncover these lost stories.
Totally. And beyond the thrill of the chase, there's also the deep satisfaction of contributing to our understanding of the world. Historians have a really important role in preserving and interpreting the past, making sure those lessons aren't forgotten.
It's about so much more than just knowing what happened. It's about understanding why it still matters today.
Exactly. History gives us context for the present. It helps us make sense of this crazy, complex world and maybe even points us towards a better future.
That's a powerful motivator for sure. But we should be real, there are some serious challenges too, right?
Definitely. As I mentioned, the job market can be really tough. Funding for research is often limited, and the work itself requires a ton of dedication. You need meticulous attention to detail, a lot of perseverance, and a willingness to spend countless hours poring over sources.
So it's not for the easily discouraged.
No, definitely not. But I think for those with a real passion for history, the rewards really outweigh those challenges.
It sounds like a career path that really attracts a certain type of person.
Yeah.
You have to be intellectually curious, detail-oriented, and just endlessly fascinated by the past.
Absolutely. And you can't be afraid to challenge conventional wisdom, to really dig for the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, and then to share your discoveries with the world.
It really does. It's not just a job, it's a calling. So for those just starting out, what advice would you give to someone who's dreaming of becoming a historian?
I think the most important thing is to nurture that passion. Read everything you can get your hands on, visit museums, watch documentaries, really immerse yourself in the stories that fascinate you.
It's about following those threads of curiosity wherever they lead you.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to branch out. Explore different time periods, different cultures, different historical themes. You never know what's going to spark a lifelong interest.
That's so true. Some of the most fascinating research probably comes from those unexpected discoveries. Speaking of research, how important is it to start developing those skills early on?
Oh, it's crucial. And RoleCatcher actually has some great resources about this in their career guide. They really emphasize the importance of hands-on experience even while you're still in school.
So what does that look like, practically speaking? Is it volunteering at a local museum, reaching out to professors about research opportunities?
All of that. And don't underestimate independent projects. Did you stumble upon a family mystery that sparked your historical curiosity? Dive in. Those personal explorations can teach you so much about research methods and historical thinking.
It's about honing those detective skills.
Hmm.
It all ties back in. Now, I know we've mentioned it throughout the episode, but I want to circle back to RoleCatcher's AI features one last time, especially for those just starting out in their careers. How can those tools specifically help aspiring historians?
They can be complete game changers. Imagine having an AI analyze your resume and cover letter, highlighting those skills and experiences that really matter to people hiring in the history field.
It's like having a personal branding expert in your corner.
Totally. And their AI-powered interview practice is seriously invaluable. You can basically have a mock interview with a historian who can then give you super personalized feedback and help you polish those answers.
That's amazing. It's like having a secret weapon for those interview nerves. Okay, before we wrap things up, I want to ask you a big one. A question I think a lot of aspiring historians grapple with. How do you make history relevant to today's world?
That's the million-dollar question for sure. I think it's about connecting those dots between the past and the present, showing how the events of yesterday are still shaping the world we live in.
It's not just about memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding those patterns, those trends, those decisions that have brought us to this very moment.
Exactly. And then it's about sharing those insights in a way that's engaging, accessible, something that makes people think. Because at the end of the day, history is about understanding ourselves, our place in the world, and those forces that have shaped who we are.
That is so well said. And it makes me think about the immense responsibility, but also the incredible privilege that comes with being a historian. You're a storyteller, a truth seeker, a guardian of the past.
Absolutely. And you can inspire other people to learn from history, engage with all its complexities, and maybe even use those lessons to build a better future.
That's what it's all about. Well, on that note, I think that's the perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of historians.
It's been fun.
We've talked about the rewards, the challenges, what it takes to succeed, and even tackled some of those tough interview questions.
And hopefully we've shown how RoleCatcher can be a fantastic resource for anyone thinking about taking the leap.
Definitely. Their guides, those incredible AI tools, and the sheer amount of information they offer can empower you every step of the way. So if you're feeling that spark of curiosity, that pull towards the past, don't ignore it. Embrace your passion for history, and who knows, you might just uncover your dream career along the way. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.